Welcome back. With the help of Pan-African community, together with relevant international actors, a referendum held peacefully delivered the newest nation on July 9th, 2011. Globally welcome as the world's newest state, the hopes and wishes of the international community for South Sudan were far from what we are now witnessing.
On December 15, an armed confrontation erupted at the center of South Sudanese Governmental Authority, the Presidential Palace in Juba. A confrontation between army officers loyal to President Salva Kiir and disgruntled soldier backing his ex-deputy, Riek Machar, that has now begun to deteriorate into civil war.
Are there lessons for Nigeria in South Sudan situation? Joining us now is Dr. Lionel Rawlins, Security Coordinator of the American University of Nigeria here in Yola. Good morning.
Good morning again. Happy New Year to both
Yeah,
of you.
compliment of the season.
Is it okay to say Baraka, the New Year?
All the same.
It's still in line with
Safiya.
saying good morning, Baraka, the New Year.
Welcome. Good morning to the New Year.
Happy to see the New Year. Or something.
The dawn of the New Year.
The dawn of the New Year.
It's nice to have you join us again this year.
Good. I missed you all.
Yeah, we do too.
Did you miss me?
Yeah,
sure do.
and happy to have you back on set.
I don't believe that
He's looking different. He's looking different.
So, away from Aaron's looking different and all that. Let's look at the situation in South Sudan. This is a new, country erupting from a mother, Sudan, and then we have them, witnessing so many issues. What would you say is the cause of the crisis?
It's a good question. If any of you have noticed that all of the countries from the Arab Spring that were given their freedom because the rest of the world supported them in overthrowing the government or whatever it was they did, none of them are free and none of them are stable. All of them are in some form of chaos or instability. And South Sudan is no different. It all comes down to power. Power and politics is what is driving the problem in South Sudan. But what is making the problem more severe is the ethnic cleansing that they have in there between the Dinka and the Nuer, which actually follows the president and the vice president. Because there is no way these people are going to get along. They have never gotten along and they will never get along, no matter what the rest of the world tried to do.
So how huge is this impact of ethnicity cleavages, this attachment tied to ethnicity? How does it really impact on the situation in South Sudan?
Well, if you go back a few years to the 1990s, you remember that slaughter and that massacre that took place between both of them? Well, that wasn't the first time. It's been going on for years, maybe over 100 years. They've been killing each other. And they have never been able to maintain peace or ever to achieve peace. Also, the first time they ever came together was when they were fighting against the North. When they were fighting for independence, they put aside their ethnic problems and their tribalism. They came together as one to fight the North. As soon as they became free and the rest of the world gave them democracy, they went straight back to what they used to be a few years ago. I mean, it didn't even last 3 years. And look at where they are now. And I doubt very much if any kind of peaceful negotiation is going to bring them back together. Maybe they just need to just bring back the North and say, let's put them back to where they were.
But the newest country in Africa, is it too quick for them to ask for independence?
That's funny you ask, because a lot of people have been asking that question. Some people believe it was too quick for them to achieve independence, to split and to go on their own. Some people felt it was like sending a 10 or 12-year-old child out on his own or her own to fend like a man or a woman. At the same time, other people believe that the rest of the world just gave them their independence, but did not give them the tools and resources to succeed. But I don't believe it was too soon or too quick. I believe it is just these people who had a golden opportunity that was given to them by the rest of the world and everybody, and they just took it and blew it over politics, ethnicity, and tribalism.
So if we're talking about too soon or too quick, the independence given to South Sudan, I think the emphasis should be that it is too quick for them to have this kind of crisis they're engulfed in with now. Shouldn't be that.
Well, if you're talking about too quick for the crisis, it was always there. The crisis was always there. It never went away.
They squashed it until 2011 before they gained their independence, and now they are in an independent state. Now, it is believed that, yes, the issue of us coming together to push forward a cause to get a nation imagine out of that should have maybe put to rest the little skirmishes of ethnic attachment that we've been kind of dealing with for decades.
You're speaking like a reasonable man. But those people are not reasonable because everything is about power and politics. For example, do you know that the army in South Sudan has the most generals in the world, more than Europe, more than the United States? Because what they have is, when they created the army, they took all the militia groups and they put them together as one, and they said, this is our army. Each one of those militia groups had generals. So if you have 30 militia groups and you had 50 generals, multiply that by 30, and you see how many generals you have. So now that the problem between the Dinka and the Nuer has surfaced, these militia groups are now gone back to how they used to be, and they're trying to kill each other. So there's nothing reasonable about these people because they want to make sure that the person they support is in power. You notice they said it was a coup. There was no coup. It is just the army, people fighting against each other. They're untrained. They're not literate. There's no self-discipline. They're militia groups. So now that all of this problem has manifested itself, you find that they're now, the first thing they went to control is what? The oil fields. The oil fields. So now they're in charge of the oil fields. And that is where all the revenue and everything is coming from. But I will also say this. Now that they've inserted themselves in the mine, in the oil field, the North gets their revenue from those oil. And they're not going to sit by and let these guys disrupt their revenue, the source of revenue, or their economy. And if push comes to shove, they're going to come north or come south and clear those oil fields. And what's going to happen is a whole massive war between the north and the south.
So the oil field now is the bond of contention.
It is a bone of contention, and it's a very tight situation that we're dealing with in our hands now. But you know, we're trying to marry this to Nigeria, where we look at what lessons the Nigerians should learn from what is going on presently now in South Sudan. Now, Nigeria in January now celebrated its 100 years of existence.
Right.
This is a nation that is an heterogeneous society that has been fused together. Now, many people have said that Nigeria ordinarily shouldn't be a nation. There are many reasons why people feel that should happen. But to you, what do you make of Nigeria being together for 100 years now?
Well, I believe that for the time that Nigeria has been together, Nigeria should be one of the world's most leading countries. You have the human resources, you have the mineral resources, you have the natural resources, and by all means, and I'm going to say this, I think that the Nigerians are the most intellectually educated people in the world. Somehow, it's probably it's in your DNA, because I've never met a dumb Nigerian.
Really?
I've never met one. If they can't do one thing, if they can't do one thing, they can do something else great. And so for the time that you've been in existence, with all of that resources that you have and the intellect that you have, you're way back in terms of where you should be. And I believe that Nigeria should be and could be in the top 3 countries in the world. But you all too, like South Sudan and other African countries, are not seizing that opportunity or seizing that moment that you have.
All right, now I will just pause you here a little bit. I don't want you to let out the cat out of the bag now, basically, concerning why Nigerians are not seizing the opportunity they have. You're going to talk about that later on. Now, we have been talking with Dr. Lionel Rawlins, Security Coordinator of the American University of Nigeria here in Yola, on the South Sudan crisis. We'll take a break now, and when we return, we continue with this discussion. So don't go away.
Welcome back. Still to come later on the show is teenage and parental responsibility. Right here in the studio, we have Dr. Lionel Rawlins, Security Coordinator of the American University of Nigeria here in Yola. He has been talking to us on the South Sudan crisis. Still talking South Sudan now and the whole issue of the oil wells and all that. Nigeria also have, you know, the major revenue or income for Nigeria is also the oil.
Absolutely.
We have South Sudan also having similar. But what lesson should Nigeria or is Nigeria to learn from what is happening in South Sudan now?
Well, for one, the ethnic problems that they're having, is the ethnic and the tribalism that's going on in South Sudan is what's destroying it. The Dinka versus the Nuer. In Nigeria, the country is rife with ethnic problems and tribalism. This group doesn't like that, this tribe doesn't like that. And this is like a cancer and it's destroying itself from within. After 100 years, and how many years of independence? 51?
53 years.
You would imagine that people can put all of that stuff aside and say, look, I don't like you and you don't like me. We don't have to go to each other's funeral or wedding, but at least we could coexist peacefully. It's not happening here. So the same thing that's happening in South Sudan could possibly happen here with this ethnic tribal cleansing stuff that's going on. But more so is the president of South Sudan. One of the things he did was he tried to seize power by firing all these people, and he was trying to become autocratic and to absorb power. And what that did was got rid of accountability and transparency, and the people got up in arms, and that's why he's in such a problem right now. If your federal government were to try that, or they need to become more accountable and more transparent and cut down on the amount of corruption and the level of corruption.
Exactly, but do you see similarities in these areas when you talk about corruption, lawlessness, and other crimes between these two countries?
Yes, there is, because this country is full of corruption, and no one has tried to stop it. Because if you try to stop it, then it's like going up against a brick wall. In South Sudan, they started off without any corruption. Everything was going good until one man decided to get rid of everybody because he wanted to be corrupt. And the people decided we don't want that, and they revolted. And well, look at what's going on in your political party with governors revolting and changing. If that continues, it's going to rip your whole political infrastructure apart, and then if the people see that happening, then it's going to be mass confusion and mass trouble. And you have enough people. You're the most populated country in Africa. And this country cannot afford to let something like a mass chaos and instability take place or take root, because if it does, it's going to be nasty and bloody.
So basically what you're trying to say is if Nigeria is not careful, it's going to find itself in a present state of things that we see going on right about now in South Sudan.
Absolutely. And not just South Sudan, but elsewhere in Somalia, in Libya and all these other places. Because even up in Egypt and Tunisia and all these places, it comes down to you have to take care of the people. You have to educate them. You have to take care of them with mental health issues, with any kind of health issues that they have. You have to take out poverty. You got to share the wealth. You got to make sure these people are taken care of, because
when
if
you
you
say
don't,
share
you
the
have
wealth,
problem.
when you should say share the wealth, I tend to laugh within me. But let's look at how Nigeria is able to manage the insecurity, its crisis within within the region. How do you think Nigeria was able to manage this crisis?
They're able to manage it because the politicians are taking care of the people they want to take care of. The ones who and by taking care of the certain people, that group of people are managing the rest of the people. And so if you pacify the people with a little, then you get enough out of them. And that is exactly what's happening. And then you also have a lot of people, Nigerians, from my experience, they tend to, you'll kill each other, but you will not go after the authority. And I think you all are very much afraid of authority. And maybe you respect authority, maybe it's from the colonial times, maybe it's that colonial upbringing where you have this deep respect for authority. Because if this were, this country is ripe for problems to exist, but no one is doing it. But you will go and kill each other in the streets.
All right. What should Nigerians and basically the leaders watch out for with regard to what we're seeing presently happening in South Sudan, and what should Nigeria actually do?
Well, the security forces, and they have to have good intelligence. They have to monitor areas. If you see small pockets of resistance, you got to put it out right away, because a small pocket of resistance will turn into a large pocket of resistance, and before you know it, you have one state revolting, and if one state revolts, another will, and if two are revolting, a third will, because then everybody will seize that moment to say, well, hey, these guys are doing it, let us do it. So you have to stop it before it even begins. And I'm sure, though, that the security forces and the intelligence forces are smart enough to know that, because they've been trained outside, they've been trained in the United States and in Europe, and they know what to look for.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for making our time to be with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Barca.
I was expecting what he was going to do. When he paused.
I thought maybe he would try the Yoruba version of, prostrating, but he's in the north now.
Well, I could say Modupe.
Okay, nice one.
Nice one there.
Thank you too.
Thank you too, Doctor. All right, that was Dr. Lionel Rawlins, Security Coordinator of the American University of Nigeria here in Yola. Still to come after the break is the technology segment with Michael Ishaku. But first, let's hear there's a